After many a trial and tribulation in Act 1, as well as the loss of his predecessor, the Baldur II continues on his legendary hunt in new lands, where the greatest trophies look a little, different than the rest of the world, but will still look fantastic mounted on our walls either way. That is, of course, all under the assumption our efforts won't be in vain, as Burge's sanity continues to slip and his greatest hunt so far awaits at the end of these harrowing lands. But first, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe, as it goes a long way towards helping out. That being said, onto the video. Burge II bumbles his way right into the next act, and the Shadow Curse lands, whose curse seems to permanently permeate this place, but with our shiny new mace, we've got nothing to worry about from its lesser effects. However, almost immediately as we set out on the trail, we stumble across some harpers wandering through the darkness. And right when we reveal ourselves to them, the shadows come alive and abduct one, revealing why exactly most people fear the dark. Burge is not most people, however, and our heroic hunter leaps into action. Unfortunately, the enemies leap into action just a little bit quicker, instantly breaking our concentration and whacking around pretty much all of our allies, with them not missing a single attack. When it does get to us, we start bonking away with a whopping 16 damage. It might be a little on the slow side, but it's not like they're really able to hit us thanks to all of our AC, just our weak little allies, and who needs those? This little routine we develop keeps up for the following turns as well, with the first of the shadows going down, and the first of the horrendous harpers going down too, not to harp on them too much. As we're taking our sweet time picking off the shadows, more of the harpers go down till there's just one left. And our shadow-strewn slaughterfest continues, with the shock of a lifetime when the last harper not only survives, but also even takes out one of the baddies, with us as usual delivering the death blow. The hapless harper then informs us of a hunting lodge awaiting our arrival out in this darkness, tells us to follow them to it, and then leaves without so much as waiting for us to loot our hard-earned trophies. However, a moment later, Burge arrives at the Last Light Inn and meets Jaheira, who is not so pleased at our arrival, since apparently stuffing your brain full of parasites is abnormal and not okay to do in public spaces or something like that. Thankfully, Maul from the Grove has made it here safe and sound and is more than willing to vouch for us. Since we're now alright by Jaheira, we are therefore alright by Quartermaster Tally, who sells us the Cloak of Protection. This phenomenal little trinket gives us both a +1 to AC and saving throws, making us even tankier, which means this is the first and last cloak we will ever need. With some minor shopping out of the way, we have a quick drink with Jaheira in the hopes this will blend our brain further. It doesn't, but rather she chooses to blend our brain the old-fashioned way, with a good old exposition dump, mainly by telling us about Thorm, an immortal undead general brought back to life seemingly to lead the Absolute's army. His headquarters is Moonrise Towers, so with our next destination in mind, we swing into action. Though, before we can, she tells us about a cleric upstairs who should help us out, but our brain warns us that's bad news waiting to happen, so we ignore her advice. Along the way to Moonrise, we meet some more harpers, ready to help us steal a way of conquering the Shadow Curse from a cultist convoy. Sure enough, we find them a moment later being led by a freaky fellow mental maniac. But this is Burge's forte. No one knows how a mangled mind works better than our hero, who makes one charisma check to get a hold of their special lantern, and a second charisma check to send them marching into the curse unprotected. And just like that, our first legendary creature is down. We'll grab our trophy later. In the meantime, we investigate their lantern and find a pixie trapped inside, who our brain insists we free, and upon being freed is kind enough to reward us with a more permanent blessing to resist the curse. Continuing down the road, we arrive at the hip and happening Moonrise Towers, where inside the main hall is General Thorm, an immortal and legendary creature passing judgment on the goblins from Act 1. They don't much like what he has to say, however, he likes their reaction a whole lot less, before meandering off to go on the world's longest smoke break, leaving us free to explore and find a group of gnolls being telepathically controlled, but with one easy check we break said control and stick them on their handler, who is kind enough to drop another space gummy to fuel our addiction, unlocking Displace more as a means to upgrade our Call the Weak than anything else. And just down at the docks nearby, we find a man guarding a couple more of these gummies. He is pretty easy to scare away with a check of his own, letting us walk right up to his precious cargo and grab it, catching the attention of the other guard who turns around at the worst moment, but with a narrow escape we are free and clear. These two extra parasites get us transfused health and Shield of Thralls as extra tools in our arsenal, though once again more for Call the Weak than their own merits. With a little more power in hand, we've got an urge, one that calls us to hunt down some legendary creatures. It's a good thing that nearby the towers we find the gold-clad Garengoth Thorm, who is absolutely bananas and madly obsessed with gold, but as we've established, no one knows quite how to get these malicious madmen to blow themselves up like the Baldur II. Our hunt is quickly completed with a self-explosion of gold and experience with nary a drop of blood spilled. To celebrate, our adult thoughts take us to a tainted tavern wherein we find our next mark, Thistlebauld Thorm, who has clearly seen better days. He pours us a vile-looking pint and asks us for the simple payment of a story in return. Naturally, we only pretend to drink his concoction, which isn't hard with all of our roll-boosting gear and a little bit of luck. And then we get storytelling with the few intact memories still floating around inside our old noggin. The sheer maddening nature of our train of thought does quite the number on poor Thistlebauld, and just like that, another Thorm is down for the count. A moment later, we commit mass murder on a murder to bump us up to level 7. This takes its form as level 4 in Paladin, granting another lay on hands charge, and most importantly, our first feat, which is an ability score improvement, bumping our charisma up to 20, making us much better at pretty much everything. To continue our little detour from taking out the Thorm family, we return to Moonrise and have a quick chat with Zarel, Ketheric's commander in charge of this place. We trick her into trusting us, and she tells us about a super duper top secret important relic that Ketheric desperately wants, locked inside of his family mausoleum where a necromancer named Balthazar is currently looking for it. Since she clearly trusts us enough for this top secret mission, we also persuade her to allow us to purchase from the tower's top secret stock. So we go have a quick chat with Lantarv downstairs to buy the Dwarven Splintmail. This 19 AC armor reduces piercing damage we take by 1, increases strength saves and checks by 1, and most importantly increases our con by 2, giving us much more HP to work with and increasing our con saves. Since we've got a bit more power, we might as well put it to the test, so we wander to the town center where we find the cultist convoy from earlier, now undead. As soon as Karnas is close enough to Karkiss, we use Control Undead on him, letting us get him as a follower until we long rest. Then we hit as many of the goons as we can with a stage fright, which works out pretty fantastically right off the bat. Oh, and when we start swinging, we're also dealing more damage thanks to the strange conduit ring, which we'll have on whenever we want a little more oomph. It very quickly becomes apparent that these bumbling buffoons really don't stand a chance against Karnas, especially when we're here to back him up. Wanting to revel in our strength more though, we decide to hunt down some more baddies just further up the road. Unfortunately, these guys are a bit too much for Karnas to handle, and we just can't kill them quick enough to save him, so our new legendary follower goes down far too quickly. As per usual though, it takes more than common riffraff to do anything to Burge, so it's not hard for us to pick them off one by one. With the town square cleared out, we're free to walk right down the road to where we find the malicious Dr. Malice Thorm. I get the feeling this guy's license has been revoked more than a few times. Either way, we rack our brain real hard to jog whatever sort of intelligence is still rattling around in there, and after a few uses of inspiration, we get an idea. Burge convinces the good doctor himself to act as a test subject for the nurses to improve their skills, and boy, do they need a lot of improvement. Well, sucks for him, but that is our 4th legendary creature already done, and most of the Thorm family line taken out as well. We celebrate by using our musical skills to play a little jig, accidentally waking up a coma patient in the process, who somehow knows about how to actually lift the shadow curse. All we need is for Halsin to open a portal to rescue some kid named Thaniel. Our hunting instincts let us know that Thaniel should be able to lead us to our next prey, so we really want to rescue him as well. To prepare, we summon a fire elemental, use our shield of thralls on ourselves, cast Sleet Storm where we expect the baddies to come from, and fire a darkness arrow where Halsin is going to conjure the portal. Halsin gets yapping about how we need to defend the portal, but when the conversation ends, I realize for whatever reason this one conversation doesn't pause our spell timers like every other conversation in the game. So the enemies show up and we are woefully unprepared, but as things get underway, we send our fire elemental off to one side to occupy some shadows. Meanwhile, we use a darkness arrow on the portal to hopefully stop archers from shooting at it, plus a speed potion fueled wall of stone scroll that comes out partially invisible, but I promise is actually there. A few enemies waste their turns hitting our summons and dashing around the place, but things start to get dire when a bajillion enemies show up at the end of this round. Our enraged elemental takes out a few more with a blast, and we use a scroll of ice storm to take out a bunch and make some ice in the hopes that they'll slip on it. This triggers our bloodlust elixir, letting us use our second action for a sunbeam, and our third for a divine smite critical hit on the nearby wraith. The ice plan works out phenomenally, with everyone trying to get in range of the portal slipping and sliding, letting us on our next turn use a lightning bolt scroll to take out some more unimpressive undead, finish off the worrisome wraith, and tickle the shadows that are tussling with the fire elemental, while of course refreshing our speed pot. Unfortunately, the ice melts at this point and all the enemies are able to dash right up to the edge of the portal's platform. Since our darkness arrow is also gone, we try and refresh it, but it dissipates into pure nothing for literally no reason. So we use a cold glyph of warding scroll on the gathered masses to deal good damage and refreeze all the water, followed up by a stage fright just to be extra safe. Our fire elemental finally goes down after distracting all the shadows for a good while, and the rest of the baddies finally start swinging at both our wall and ourselves. When it gets back to Burge, we start with an Eldritch Blast on an archer who can shoot our portal, and then we use a Thunder Wave to damage and yeet away most of the melee guys. Then we use a Confusion on them to doubly make sure nobody can do anything on this last round, and for good measure, shove off a dude who resisted our Thunder Wave. The only one who actually fires at the portal is a lone archer who resisted Confusion. The rest either skip through their turns or swing at us, meaning just like that, the portal survives and Halcyon returns. But our hard work is far from over as Halcyon reveals Thaniel is still missing something, a piece of himself. So now we gotta track down his missing half, his legendary half, which is in the form of Oliver, who is not going to come willingly with us and instead jumps into a portal of his own. Naturally, we follow after. The Portalpalooza continues on the other side as we face off against Oliver with Shovel and Connor at our heels. Daddy, and yes, that's really his name, uses an AoE attack on us, killing Shovel, which bugs and triggers Ollie's legendary action for some reason, creating yet more AoE damage. Connor also goes down to a few crits, but other than the damage we took from the bugged legendary action, we are a-okay, thanks to our protection from evil and good. We start off with the Repulsor, killing most of the Gremlin's goons, and when they die, they damage Oliver's protective barrier. Then we just focus on healing up and gaining some distance. Worth noting, we've also got an elixir that prevents us from falling asleep, so we don't have to worry about Mummy. As Oliver continues to summon more undead each turn, the existing ones fail to hit us at all, and we very slowly pick them off with EBs as we retreat further. At this point, an owlbear gets summoned too, which is actually capable of hitting us, though still not likely. With so many baddies around, we decide to go for a stage fright mixed in with our usual blasts, and this does wonders at taking out the little guys. Meanwhile, the owlbear dashes in the wrong direction since the only pathway up to us is being body blocked by a myriad of frightening children. Next turn it manages to jump over to us, though it doesn't actually hit. We in turn take out our rage on Mummy and find Oliver's legendary action has a range limit, which means from here out we're in the clear. Also, Arabella is here. Hey Arabella. And since we're no longer afraid of being put to sleep, we use an elixir of necrotic resistance. Now it's just time for good old-fashioned slaughtering with whatever AoE items we have on us. Eldritch Blast carries the rest of the fight after we run out, with a few rounds passing by firing beam after beam till eventually Oliver is defenseless. For some reason though, the game won't let us grab his skull for our collection and we have to let him go, but still that's another legendary hunt complete as far as Burge is concerned. After that showing, it's become clear that we need more AC. I just need it, okay? It's not a problem. So we swing by Mantis at the last light to buy some Evasive Shoes. Basically just giving another +1 to our AC, although we'll only be wearing these when we're absolutely certain that we don't need the Boots of Striding on, since those prevent knockback and prone. Side note, for whatever reason, Burge's brain melts a little more, and he just starts pulling his pants down constantly whenever he's in his natural form, so yeah. Anyways, after we're all done with that, we head towards the much anticipated Mausoleum, where we encounter another one of our marks, Raphael. Unfortunately, we can't get him quite just yet. Instead, he's shown up to make himself sound important, as well as tell us that one of his enemies lies below and he asks us to kill them, but that just gives us an idea. For now though, we'll focus on just getting inside the hidden Sharn Gauntlet underneath the Mausoleum. All we need to do is push a few buttons. And once we get inside to move further in, we need to solve another puzzle, but it's easily done if we approach the center button from the east and then the south, opening up all the doors around the room. One of the passages leads off to the side, towards a room full of mushrooms and an invisible cloaker, which is honestly not the most interesting hunt. It can't really do anything at all to us, and since we still don't have extra attack, it takes a while, but we get it done. Before we go on too much further, our legendary senses get tingling. Balthazar is nearby, so we use protection from evil and good to keep us safe. Sure enough, in the next room we find some friendly skeletons being controlled by the boisterous necromancer. He gets real mad when the room starts shaking, and a moment later we find out why, as a whole host of Sharan Justiciars start showing up out of portals all around the room. Leaving our skeletal sidekicks to deal with them for now, we start jogging towards Balthazar's room. Unfortunately, yet more portals and Justiciars show up to make things worrisome. Well, they've got numbers, we've got gloves of thievery and a bajillion lockpicks to roll in at 20 with, and a good thing too, cause by god this took a while. 20 whole lockpicks down the drain, never to be seen again. Our reward is Balthazar joining the fight on our side to even up the odds. From here, this fight is absolute chaos. Undead shooting undead, Shovel getting executed in the corner, Balthazar casting Cloud Kill on the masses and downing a speed pot. Burge, meanwhile, lets his prey exhaust himself, just standing in the corner of Balthi's bedroom while the folks outside work things out between them. This takes an extra long while since Balthazar's legendary action makes an AoE wherever anything dies that heals all undead who start their turn in it, and everyone here except us is undead. Fast forward a couple dozen rounds and it's Burge, Balthazar, and a billion baddies, and the novice necromancer is completely out of spell slots. So we just get to work clearing out the masses one slow hit at a time, and even though they really can't do anything to us, they still decide to waste their turns shooting us instead of Balthazar. We hope leaving the room will get them focusing on their real target, but it just results in them dashing to follow Burge instead. Ah well, we use a cone of cold scroll to thin most of them down, head back inside the bedroom to finish off yet another fantastic hunt, and get to work on bonking these bozos. Another dozen or so rounds to go of rinsing and repeating this, and all the Justiciars bite the dust once and for all. All this hard work results in the much awaited level 8 and 5 in Paladin. This gives us another first level spell slot, 2 more second level spell slots alongside access to the respective spells. And most importantly of all, extra attack, effectively doubling our damage output, and not a moment too soon. Since we're feeling pretty confident after that display, we head back to the outside for a moment and prep for another fight by throwing on our Callous Glow Ring and downing an Elixir of Guileful Movement to prevent us from being paralyzed or restrained. Then we send in Shovel to get a surprise round on our next legendary hunt, though she does a horrible job and ends up surprising herself somehow and gets instantly taken out. So we reset and fire off a blast and explode a few of these Shadow Curse Needle Blights to start the fight proper. On our turn, we down a potion of Glorious Vaulting, while the enemies just spend their time dashing on up to us. Next round, Burge gets the Sunbeam of a lifetime, dunking on these dunces and leaving just one goon and the shambling mound itself still alive. And our bonus action lets us jump far away, so the enemies have to skip their turns dashing yet again. With another Eldritch Blast, we finish off said goon, and with another jump we manage to force the mound to just completely fail at catching us at all. Rinse and repeat for a couple turns until eventually it does catch up to us due to some poor planning. But this just lets us do a Super Smite, aka Thunderous Smite, turned into a crit, and then a Divine Smite on top of said crit for a whole lot of damage that also knocks it prone. The combo continues with a regular smite to add insult to injury afterwards. Since it skips its turn standing up and doing nothing else, we get to finish it off with one more little bonk to its wee noggin. Before we get to our other hunts, we decide to take on the Sharan Trials in the Mausoleum to find Kethric's relic, and Burge manages to drop his trousers while performing a holy ritual to activate the Soft Step Trial, which has gotta be somewhat blasphemous. Regardless, for this one all we gotta do is stay hidden from the patrolling shadows and get to the end, starting by jumping through this Burge-sized window, then lockpicking this gate in our way, letting us grab our first Umbral Gem, easy peasy. Next on our list is the Self-Same Trial, which starts by Burge full stripping, much to this little freak's enjoyment. Once the trial is activated, we can put all of our gear back on and head inside where we find a clone of ourselves with absolutely no gear, which means he's as easy as pie to take out, and that's Umbral Gem numero dos acquired. Finally is the Faith Leap Trial, in which we need to cross a room with an invisible pathway. But to make things easy, we start by walking on the path, then jumping up onto the interspersed platforms, followed up by jumping back down onto the path, before finally hopping on up to the end where we grab our third gem. Unfortunately, we need one more, and as we're searching for wherever it is, Burge stumbles across a peculiar ritual circle. Upon interacting with it, a lowly rat threatens to hunt us down, so we show it what for, only to summon a whole horde of other rats. Since there is just so many of them in this fight, we throw on the Holy Lance Helm to make things go a wee bit faster. And after we've committed a decent amount of localized genocide on the rat populace, the final rat turns into a guy, just kind of a dude, who it seems was under some sort of curse. He also seems to have forgotten his manners, as he tries to murder us for lifting this curse. But he really isn't too tough to deal with thanks to a couple smites, a good solid shove off the ledge to the depths below, and a psionic backlash to finish him off. Well, it was certainly an odd detour, but time to get back to finding that 4th gem. Turns out it's not too hard to find as we stumble across it in a room full of devils, one of which is legendary and presumably Raphael's enemy. Before we can do much to talk to him, he starts rambling about some song and contract being completed, and then Raphael just kinda shows up and whisks him away. I get the feeling we'll encounter him again, but for now I'm counting that as a W. Elsewhere in the gauntlet, we stumble across a library filled with more Justiciars who, as you well know by now, really can't do a thing to us. So we just bash them on the head a few times until the room is all cleared out and we're free to roam. By pressing this button in the northwest corner of the room, we open up the locked area, and by putting the book titled Teachings of Lost the Night Singer on this pedestal, we open up a secret passageway. Inside is some useless spear that doesn't do much, alongside a surprise tool that will help us later, so keep an eye on that. Now, we could go set the ball rolling and head to the depths of the gauntlet, but there's still a few more things our cracked cranium wants to do beforehand, such as freeing the trapped tieflings and gnomes inside Moonrise prisons, starting by taking out the patrolling scrying eyes, though admittedly failing to get both before a couple other folks spot us and join the fight. Either way, we still managed to blow the second one up, and thanks to the help of an invisibility potion, avoid a close call with death and reset the encounter, only to come back a moment later and with the help of minor illusion and a strength elixir, start shoving all the patrolling guards into the abyss below one by one. And to spice things up, we take out a few of the guards the old-fashioned way as well. Once all is said and done, we use the classic warlock pick to blast open the back walls of the prison cells and free our waylaid wanderers. But god, we really should have left some of them to rot. Sorry, moving on. After that, we very quickly jump into the oubliette right by the prison and loot this corpse to unlock Charm, which we really won't be using, but it is better to have than to not. With that, it's time to prepare for our greatest hunt yet, Ketheric Thorm, and to do that, we first need to convince his dog to not slaughter us for breaking into his bedroom. It doesn't go well. For the dog, that is. Shortly after, we find what we were looking for in his chest, a way to emotionally destroy him, since a good hunter defeats their prey in every aspect. To prepare in another way, we also finally buy the Drakethroat Glaive from Roa Moonglow downstairs. This bad boy lets us cast the Elemental Weapon spell once per long rest with no concentration on any weapon that exists nearby, meaning we can just drop our usual weapon on the ground and cast it on that, basically granting us an extra +1 to attack rolls on top of an extra 1d4 of any element we so desire. Definitely should have bought this fine fella a little earlier, but better late than never. After about 30 minutes of shopping for potions, we swing by the center of town and press the panels on the statue in order of north, west, and then east to open a secret passage underground, wherein we find 3 statues that test our charisma, intelligence, and wisdom respectively. Passing each one means we get a +5 to each of those stats till our next long rest. Then we head back to the gauntlet and find yet another Sharin statue to make an ability check against, this one granting resistance to necrotic damage until next long rest, which will also be real handy. With all of our prep work out of the way, it's time to finally find what's at the bottom of this gauntlet, using all of our acquired gems to get there. Waiting for us at the bottom is a portal to the Shadowfell, where no doubt the source of our mark's immortality is coming from. Sure enough, as soon as we arrive on the other side, we find a prison that would have a chance of even holding Burge, and a lone figure is trapped in its depths. A lone figure who very rudely greets us, but at the very least offers to forgive our transgressions. And given that we don't remember most of our transgressions, we figure it's a safe bet to set her free. Thus, Dame Aelin is reborn, and for once in our life, we've got a hunting partner ready to take on Ketheric. Turns out a handful of harpers have beat us to Moonrise and are also raring to go. Oh, and they left us another little space snack, granting perilous stakes to round us out and get the last of the illithid powers that we can. With us at the head, we charge into Moonrise at last, ready to wreak havoc, only to get instantly shut down with our Eldritch Blast getting counterspelled. But the fight breaks out nonetheless as harpers get wailed on, Jaheira jumps into maybe the worst location to be, and many a folk gets black-holed and clumped up. In the following round, things continue to go awry, with our hapless harpers getting hit by Hadar's hunger, not to mention getting terribly distracted by a Guardian of Faith. And to make matters worse, the round after that, Jaheira gets wiped out, making it all the way to round 3 at the very least, which I think is a new record. Although, most of the rest of our fodder also bite the dust this round, which is, well, honestly not that upsetting. We at the very least have a clearer line of sight to keep poking at our enemies, which is what we've been up to so far in case you've been wondering. The baddies are nice enough to use another Hunger Vidar, blocking the space in between us and them. Then they finish off the 2 remaining Harpers, meaning the real fight can finally begin in proper. The real fight, of course, being us poking them with a blast and then running as far away as we possibly can. Repeat ad infinitum. Okay, admittedly we do a couple bonks here and there if the enemies manage to get close enough, but for the most part it is entirely ranged attacks of some variety. Annoyingly enough, some do come back to life if we kill them outside the safety of the towers, but Shadow-Cursed Undead are no threat to us and often helpful thanks to our Bloodlust elixir. Soon enough the last of them fall and are brought lower than Burge's pants. Then we just need to fight our way up to the rooftop past some Necromancer and her Necromites, which you can bet your bottom gold piece does not take long at all, since she can't do enough damage to scare us by her lonesome. Since we realize that we're very close to a level up, we use an Invis potion and infiltrate the prison again, now occupied by a whole bunch of undead and 3 Necromancers. Shovel gets sent in to surprise them all, and while they're reeling, we try and use Control Undead on the lone Death Shepherd to even the odds, but alas, it doesn't work out. So we follow up with an Ice Storm Scroll on a whole bunch of them, taking out some and weakening others, before culling even more with a quick repulsor. Our dear loyal Quasit companion gets bone chilled and evaporated, leaving us to finish off just a few more Necromites, giving us the XP we need, meaning we can just get out of dodge now that we don't need anything else down here, and indulge in our reward of level 9 and 6 in Paladin, which is a huge one for us. First off, level 9 grants a proficiency improvement up to +4, making us better at pretty much everything. Secondly, we get an Aura of Protection, which increases all of our saving throws by an amount equal to our Charisma modifier. You heard me right, that's an extra +5 to every single saving throw we make, forever, always. We just became a whole lot more unkillable. As our Burge-oning Power blossoms, we at last reach the rooftop and find a cranky Ketheric who is at last mortal. And we get the chance to lunge at his insecurities thanks to that note we stole from his bedroom earlier, essentially just making him feel real bad about himself. Then Aelin shows up to make him real angry and our rooftop rumble commences proper. Since this is a pretty scary fight with not a lot of terrain to use to our advantage, we decide to hide in a darkness cloud for this one. Sistera the Necromancer drops a fireball on the Night Song, and the Night Song in turn gets one good hit off on Ketheric before being knocked prone by a shield bash. For now, we just get firing on the Necromites to trigger our Bloodlust elixir and then trim down the Necromancer's HP so we don't have to worry about getting overwhelmed by summons. Unfortunately, with yet another fireball and a Divine Smite from Papa Thorm himself, Aelin goes down, though she is immortal so she'll be back on her next turn ready to start shoving Bone Boys, before naturally going down to them as well. Our pattern of Eldritch Blasting keeps up when we can, but the Big K prioritizes us and comes into our darkness to whoop some Burge booty, if only he could actually hit us. Either way, Burge gets to finish off that nuisance of a Necromancer and then starts clobbering Ketheric with a more hands-on approach. He keeps up his tried and true strategy of standing in the darkness and wailing blindly, only for it to rub off on us and we find ourselves doing the same. Fast forward to when a hit does land and we crit him all the way into the next cutscene, where he just kinda says he doesn't feel like fighting anymore, whacks Aelin with a giant tentacle, and then teleports both her and himself somewhere underground. Well, I guess we'll just clean up here and catch up in a second. Once we're all done, we hop inside a nearby fleshy hole and get following the trail. While we're down here, we find and free an imprisoned us from way back at the start of Act 1, who gives us the ability to summon them once per short rest on command. Burge also stumbles across a room positively filled to the brim with fiends and undead, waiting to be wiped out. They can't do much to us once we take out the Death Shepherd, so we use our Control Undead ability on it, and then just use the old Bonk Hammer to settle things as they used to. The Shepherd goes down pretty fast afterwards, but it doesn't matter since so too do all of our foes. We also make a quick note to wipe out as many intellect devourers laying around the place as we can, since the XP they give is just so good. With the area nice and clear, we've got one final showdown to get to, and beforehand we prep by putting on all of our best gear for the job. That's the Dark Justiciar half-plate so we can better keep concentration, Gloves of Heroism to make us tankier, and the Doom Hammer since we get the feeling there's some healing we'll need to stop. And of course the Doom Hammer is getting Elemental Weapon put on it for good measure. Upon arriving at the bottom, we find Gortash and Orin, the other chosen of the Absolute, in a meeting with Ketheric. Seems like they aren't getting along the Vest, which might be something we can use to our advantage in the future. But for now, we find out that the Absolute is actually an Elder Brain, a legendary creature, and one that is being controlled by these Champions of the Dead 3. They say their farewells pretty soon after the light show is over and leave Ketheric to his brooding. With the potion of invisibility we throw down on both Scratch and ourselves, we get into position, with Scratch by Aelin and us in the perfect spot to smite this Mind Flayer. As soon as we do, Ketheric spots us and starts yapping like crazy. We remind him once more of how we totally made him cry on top of the tower above, and he decides to end it all out of sheer embarrassment. Unfortunately, he gets brought back as the unstoppable godly apostle of Merkel, a god of death, so I guess he's finally worthy prey. When we're back in the fight, Scratch immediately proves himself to be best boy and frees Dame Aelin, making the apostle susceptible to damage. Then we obliterate the Mind Flayer with a crit divine smite thanks to a potion of speed, which for some reason doesn't trigger our Bloodlust elixir. So instead of the darkness spell, we use a darkness arrow to keep Merkel blinded, but this does trigger his legendary action, which is a retaliatory Gaze of the Dead. Since this is a surprise round, none of the baddies get a turn, but Aelin sure does, and she is immediately out for blood. For some reason, the Lord of the Dead also skips his turn on the second round. Confusing, but I'm not one to look a gift Merkel in the mouth. On Burge's turn, we cast the spell Darkness, which as it turns out doesn't overwrite the existing shorter timed Darkness arrow, followed by Spiteful Suffering getting used to trigger our gloves. Passing it back to Merkel, he does finally use a damaging move, but it doesn't even break our temp HP because we're just so good at making saves and have resistance. Back to us, and it's finally time to start wailing, with our very first smite being a critical, followed up by 2 regular smites absolutely chunking this poor soul. And we make sure to retake speed potions whenever we need to so we don't get lethargic. Because the darkness arrow ran out, he does get to see us for a moment, allowing him to use both Gaze of the Dead and Call of the Damned on us as well, which actually does deal light damage past our temp HP. Next time we can, just to be safe, we make sure to re-blind him with the actual spell Darkness, which should last well past the time this fight is over, only for us to keep smiting away with 1 hit and then temporarily switching to a regular hit, saving spell slots in case we drop concentration. The agonized apostle wails and screams and practically begs for his life at this point, barely tickling us. Seeing this sad display, we throw caution to the wind and go for another divine smite, which by pure luck is yet another crit, and then another divine smite for huge damage, and at last a solid bonk to finish off poor little Merkel. Aelin does try and pretend that it's her kill at the end, but I think we all know who the master of this hunt was. Off Ketheric's corpse, we grab a rock, which our brain is sure that we'll be needing for something, as well as his clothes, more for a temporary switch up in fashion than anything else. When we get back to safety, there's a touching reunion between Aelin and whoever this girl is, but I suppose they'll be traveling with us for now, cause why not? A voice in our head then gives maybe the world's most incorrect pep talk, and as we leave at last towards our much anticipated destination, the shadow curse is lifted thanks to our actions. A thought pierces through the rattling mind of our bumbling Burge. We might just be that 1 in a million trophy hunter that leaves the world better than we found it. Thank you so very much for watching. Sorry for the delay on this one. I was out of town for a couple of weeks, but I hope the wait was worth it. As always, a special thanks to our Storyteller tier members here on YouTube: Bunny Warren, Damon, Larry Renzokukin, Shirtles, LaFay, Mark Rainbow, Vivian, Garrett Sapp, Rat King, Lovely Velvet, Joe Mama, Apricot Antlers, Beltfed Joe, Lumina, Chance Hine, and Steven SSD.